The silence at the edge of space. The salvage ship Creven's Fortune drifted through the null sector like a moth through fog. Captain Zelvix kept all three of his eyes locked on the navigation display, watching the readings flicker and die, then return as ghosts of themselves. This region of space had swallowed dozens of vessels over the past 2 centuries. Most were never seen again. The few that returned brought back stories of madness, of instruments that screamed warnings in dead languages, of shadows that moved against the stars. But Zelvix was desperate. His crew was desperate. The war between the Arcanate Empire and the Velis Coalition had destroyed the trade routes, and salvage was the only work left for those without allegiance to either side. When the deep-range scanner caught the echo of something massive hidden in the null sector's electromagnetic storms, Zelvix made the decision that would change everything. There, his sensor officer, a thin Velis named Korath, pointed at the display with a trembling appendage. Mass signature is, impossible. That can't be right. The object was enormous. Larger than any dreadnought, larger than the orbital stations that circled the core worlds. It hung motionless in the darkness, swallowing light rather than reflecting it. The salvage ship's instruments struggled to define its edges, as if the thing existed slightly outside normal space. Could be a derelict Titan class, Zelvix said, though his voice carried no confidence. The great ships of the previous age were legends, most of them destroyed in the Purge Wars. If we can strip even a fraction of its systems, we'll never need to work again. The crew exchanged glances. Fear and greed warred in their expressions. Greed won. Creven's Fortune approached slowly, every sensor array extended, every scanner running at maximum. The storms parted around the vessel as if it commanded the very fabric of space to move aside. As they drew closer, details emerged from the blackness. The hull was smooth, almost organic, with no visible seams or rivets. No markings. No identification codes. Just endless black that seemed to drink in their searchlights. I don't recognize the design, Korath whispered. It doesn't match any empire in the database. Not Arcanate. Not Velis. Not even the old consortium. Older, then, Zelvix said. Better. Worth more. They found an access point, or something that might have been one. A section of hull that was marginally less black than the rest. Zelvix ordered the cutting team forward. They worked for 3 hours with plasma torches that should have carved through any known alloy in minutes. The metal resisted, then finally yielded with a sound like a sigh. The moment the hull breached, every instrument on Creven's Fortune went dead. Emergency lights flickered on. The crew froze, their breath visible in the sudden cold. Then, slowly, the systems began to restart, but differently. The computer core was speaking in a language none of them recognized. The displays showed symbols that hurt to look at, geometric patterns that seemed to fold through dimensions the eye couldn't follow. Captain, Koratha's voice was barely audible. I'm detecting life signs. Inside the vessel. Impossible. Nothing could survive and therefore. It's moving toward us. The boarding team of 6 armed mercenaries entered the breach. Their suit cameras transmitted grainy images back to the Fortune. Corridors stretched into impossible distances. The interior was larger than the exterior should have allowed. Gravity operated in directions that had no name. One mercenary vomited inside his helmet. Another began praying in the old tongue of the Forgotten Worlds. They found the chamber at what might have been the center of the ship, though direction had lost all meaning by then. It was a vast space, circular, with walls that seemed to be both metal and something alive. And in the center, suspended in a field of frozen light, was a figure. Human. The galaxy had declared humans extinct 317 years ago. Their worlds were ash. Their colonies were graveyards. The few survivors had been captured, studied, dissected, and finally dismissed as a primitive species that had reached too far and paid the natural price for weakness. But this human was alive. His eyes opened. They were not the soft brown or blue of the specimens in the imperial museums. They were white, blazing with light that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the visible spectrum. His skin was unmarked, perfect, as if time itself had refused to touch him. When he moved, it was not the clumsy motion of organic life but the precise efficiency of something that had transcended the limitations of flesh. The suspension field dissolved like morning mist. The human stepped down. His bare feet made no sound on the metal floor. He looked at the 6 mercenaries with their weapons raised, their fingers frozen on triggers, and he smiled. It was not a cruel smile or a kind one. It was the smile of someone who had waited a very long time and was pleased to finally begin. When he spoke, every translation device on every ship within 1,000 light-years suddenly understood him perfectly. "You should not have come here," the human said softly. "But I am grateful that you did. The galaxy has forgotten what it did to my people. I am going to help them remember." Then the warship began to wake. The reckoning begins. The first mercenary died without understanding how. One moment he was standing with his rifle aimed at the human's chest. The next, he was on the floor, his helmet cracked, his vital signs flatlined. The human had not appeared to move. He simply stood in the same position, watching them with those burning white eyes. The second mercenary fired. The plasma bolt crossed the distance in a microsecond, and stopped. It hung in the air between them, a ball of superheated gas frozen in time and space. The human tilted his head, studying it with the curiosity of someone examining an insect. Then he closed his fist, and the plasma collapsed into nothing. "Your weapons were designed to kill flesh," he said quietly. "I have not been merely flesh for a very long time." The remaining 4 mercenaries ran. They made it 17 steps before the corridor twisted, folding space like paper, and they found themselves back where they started. The human had not moved from his position. He simply waited as they scrambled, panicked, fired their weapons uselessly into the walls. One by one, they fell, not from violence, but from something far worse. Their minds could not process what they were seeing. The contradictions in physics, the impossible geometry, the presence of something that should not exist, it broke them. On the bridge of Creven's Fortune, Captain Zelvix watched his boarding team's vital signs disappear from the display. His hands trembled over the controls. "Seal the breach. Cut the connection. Get us away from that thing." But the ship would not respond. The engines were active, fuel flowing, power systems at maximum, but they were not moving. Something held them in place with a grip stronger than gravity, gentler than a magnetic field, and absolutely unbreakable. The communication systems activated on their own. Every screen on the bridge showed the same image, the interior of the alien warship, the circular chamber, and the human standing at its center. He looked directly at the camera, as if he could see through the transmission, through the hull, through the very thoughts of everyone watching. "My name is Callum," the human said. "I was a child when the fleets came to Earth. I watched from an orbital station as your empires turned our homeworld into glass and ash. I watched as you hunted the survivors through the colonies. I watched as you captured my people and opened them like machines, studying our biology, cataloging our weaknesses, writing reports on why we were too primitive to matter." Zelvix's mouth went dry. He knew the history, every educated being in the galaxy did. The human incident had been taught as a cautionary tale about species that expanded too quickly without understanding their place in the cosmic order. The major empires had acted together, a rare moment of unity, to eliminate what they called a potential disruption to galactic stability. But the official histories never mentioned survivors. They certainly never mentioned anything like this. "I was taken to a research facility on Talvex Prime," Callum continued, his voice eerily calm. "They wanted to understand how humans could adapt so quickly to hostile environments. They performed 347 experiments on me over the course of 9 years. No anesthetic. They said pain responses were part of the data they needed." The screens flickered. Images appeared, medical readouts, surgical procedures, a child strapped to a table screaming silently behind a sealed glass wall. Zelvix looked away, but the images were on every screen, even the ones that had been offline. On the 348th day of the 9th year, something changed, Callum said. The experiments had pushed my biology past natural limits. I was dying. But something in human genetics, something your scientists had dismissed as junk code, activated. I did not die. I evolved. The warship around him began to hum. The sound was below hearing, above hearing, existing in frequencies that touched the soul rather than the ear. Creven's fortune shook. Systems that had been dead for centuries came online. The black hole began to emit a light that was not light, a radiation that was not radiation, but something fundamental to reality itself. They tried to kill me then, Callum continued. Used every weapon in their arsenal. I survived. So they sealed me in this ship, a prison they built specifically to contain me. They buried it here, in the null sector, where the electromagnetic storms would hide it forever. And they erased all records of what they had done. He took a step forward. The camera followed him automatically. Behind him, the walls of the chamber began to shift, revealing vast spaces filled with technology that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. Weapons that had no triggers. Engines that had no fuel. Control systems that responded to thought rather than touch. I spent 300 years in here, Callum said. Alone. Evolving. Learning to interface with this vessel. They built it to be my cage, but they could not imagine what I would become. This ship is not separate from me anymore. It is me. My body. My will. My memory of everything your civilizations took from my species. The hull of the warship began to reconfigure. Sections that had been solid became transparent. Through the viewing ports of Creven's fortune, Zelvix and his crew could see inside the vessel now, could see chambers filled with suspended bodies. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. All human. All preserved in some state between life and death. These are my people, Callum said softly. The ones your empires captured and forgot about. I found them in research facilities across 24 worlds. I took them. Brought them here. Kept them safe while I grew strong enough to do what needed to be done. He looked directly at the camera again. Thank you, Captain Zelvix, for breaking the seal. For 3 centuries, I have waited for someone to set me free. Now the waiting is over. The warship moved. Not with engines or thrusters, but by simply deciding that it was somewhere else. Space bent. Reality twisted. Creven's fortune was released from its grip and tumbled away, its crew screaming. By the time they stabilized their ship and looked back, the warship was gone, but they could feel its presence spreading across the sector. Every sensor, every scanner, every deep space monitoring station suddenly detected it. A massive black vessel moving through the galaxy at speeds that should have been impossible, heading directly toward the core worlds. Heading toward the empires that had destroyed humanity. And as it traveled, it broadcast a single message on every frequency, in every language, to every inhabited world. Remember what you did. Remember what you took. And prepare to answer for it. The galaxy answers. The Arcanate Empire received the message first. Their core world, Archon Prime, had stood for 12,000 years as the seat of galactic power. Its orbital defense grid could destroy entire fleets. Its planetary shields had never been breached. When the sensors detected the approaching warship, the High Command did not panic. They had crushed empires before. One human and his stolen vessel would be no different. They were wrong within the first 30 seconds. The warship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Archon system, and every military installation immediately locked weapons onto it. 37 battle stations, 400 defense platforms, and the entire home fleet, over 2,000 vessels, prepared to fire. The firing command was given. Every weapon discharged simultaneously in the most concentrated barrage in recorded history. The warship did not dodge. It did not raise shields. The weapons simply stopped working. Missiles lost power mid-flight and drifted harmlessly into space. Energy beams dissipated before reaching their target. Kinetic projectiles slowed to a stop as if they had struck an invisible wall made of frozen time. Then the warship responded, not with weapons, but with truth. Every soldier, every commander, every citizen on Archon Prime suddenly experienced a memory that was not their own. They felt what it was like to be human during the purge. They felt the heat of orbital bombardment turning homes into vapor. They felt the terror of children being separated from parents. They felt the cold steel of examination tables, the bite of surgical tools, the helpless agony of being studied like animals while scientists took notes. The memories were not simply shown, they were lived. Every Arcanate citizen experienced 300 years of human suffering compressed into 10 minutes of real time. When it ended, millions were on their knees, screaming. Thousands had lost their minds entirely. The High Command sat paralyzed in their war room, tears streaming down faces that had never known grief. Admiral Thex, commander of the Home Fleet, was the first to recover enough to speak. His voice shook as he opened a channel to the warship. "Please, we surrender. We will give you anything. Just make it stop." Callum's face appeared on every screen across the planet. His expression had not changed, still calm, still patient, still carrying that terrible certainty of purpose. "I am not here for your surrender," he said. "I am here so you will remember." The warship moved deeper into the system. As it passed each battle station, each defense platform, they simply powered down. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Their crews sat at their stations, unable to move, unable to fight, forced to confront what their ancestors had done. When the warship reached orbit above Archon Prime, it did something no one expected. The hull opened, and from within came thousands of small craft, sleek vessels of human design, beautiful and terrifying in their simplicity. They descended to the surface not as invaders, but as witnesses. Each craft carried preserved humans in suspended animation. The ones Callum had rescued from laboratories and forgotten facilities. "These are the ones you forgot," Callum's voice echoed across the planet. 317 years ago, your empire signed the Extermination Accord. You declared my species too dangerous to exist. You erased our worlds. And then you erased us from your history books, as if we had never mattered at all. The craft landed in the Grand Plaza before the Imperial Palace, where monuments celebrated 10,000 years of Arcanate supremacy. The suspension fields deactivated. The humans inside began to wake, men, women, children, elders, all preserved exactly as they had been on the day they were captured. They emerged confused, traumatized, blinking in the light of a sun that was not their own. "I am giving them to you," Callum said. "Not as prisoners. As your teachers. They will live among you. They will remind you every day of what you are capable of. And you will care for them, protect them, honor them, or I will return." The threat needed no elaboration. Every being on Archon Prime had felt what the warship could do. They had experienced the weight of humanity's suffering. They knew, with absolute certainty, that if they failed in this duty, something far worse than death awaited them. The warship departed Archon Prime, leaving the Empire in chaos. But it did not leave the galaxy. Over the next 6 months, Callum visited every world that had participated in humanity's destruction. The Velis Coalition felt the memories of their genetic experiments, the decades they had spent trying to weaponize human adaptability. The Krell Dominion experienced the horror of their orbital bombardments, the casual efficiency with which they had exterminated entire colonies. The Talvex Concordat relived the tortures performed in their research facilities, the screams of human children that their scientists had recorded for study. Each world received the same gift, human survivors, waking from centuries of frozen sleep, placed under the protection of the very civilizations that had tried to destroy them. And each world knew, without doubt, that Callum was watching. Some empires tried to resist. The Krell Dominion attempted to hide their rescued humans away, to lock them in comfortable prisons where they would not be seen. Callum returned within a day. He did not destroy the Krell homeworld. He did something worse. He made them feel what it was like to be imprisoned, to be hidden away as an inconvenience, to be treated as less than sentient. The entire population experienced it simultaneously. When it ended, the humans were released, given places of honor, and the Krell never tried to hide them again. Other empires tried diplomacy. They sent ambassadors to the warship, offering treaties, reparations, alliances. Callum listened to each one with that same calm patience, and then he asked them a single question: if I had not returned, would you have remembered them on your own? None could answer honestly. The silence was answer enough. By the time a galactic year had passed, every major civilization had been visited. Tens of thousands of humans had been returned to life and placed in the care of the species that had tried to destroy them. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as living reminders, walking monuments to a genocide that the galaxy had tried to forget. Callum's final message was broadcast from the center of the galaxy, from the ancient sector where the first interstellar civilizations had been born. His warship hung in the void, visible to every deep space observatory, every long-range scanner. A dark monument against the stars. Humanity did not ask to be part of your wars, he said. We did not threaten your empires. We were simply expanding, exploring, learning, as every species does. You chose to see that as a threat. You chose extinction over coexistence. And then you chose to forget. He paused, and for the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. Not anger. Not hatred. Something deeper and more terrible, sorrow. I have given you a gift, he continued. The chance to remember. To do better. My people will live among you now, and you will see them every day. You will see their resilience. Their capacity for forgiveness, even after everything you have done. And perhaps, over time, you will learn from them what it means to be truly human. The warship began to fade, not moving away but phasing out of normal space, returning to the hidden dimensions where it had waited for so long. But before it vanished completely, Callum spoke one final time. I will be watching. Always. If you honor them, I will remain in the shadows. But if you forget again, if you harm even one of them, I will return. And next time, I will not be merciful. The warship disappeared. The galaxy exhaled. On 1,000 worlds, humans walked among aliens who had once hunted them. In schools, children learned the true history of the human incident, not as a cautionary tale of expansion, but as a warning about genocide. In government chambers, laws were passed protecting the human survivors, guaranteeing their rights, their dignity, their place in galactic society. And in the darkness between stars, the warship waited. Callum waited. Watching. Remembering. Ensuring that humanity would never be forgotten again. The galaxy had paid for its mistake in blood, in tears, in the unbearable weight of truth. And it would spend centuries learning to live with what it had done. But at least now, finally, it would remember.